Hello, and thank you all once again for tuning into my podcast, Real Talk About Life and Relationships. It's been a minute since I've been on. Life just kind of I got carried away with life, or life carried me away, however you want to say it. But I got kind of tied up in a lot of things, and so I have not been able to get on here and do the show like I've been wanting to. But I'm back today, and I want to pick up where I left off about um, how to deal with your issues. And so, before I get into that, because I'm gonna get into a specific aspect of that, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you all that my show is supposed to be on Thursdays at 12 o'clock. I'm even a little bit late today. Bear with me, but you can kind of catch me at Thursdays at 12 o'clock. If you don't catch me, you can always watch past episodes of my show or my show live on Facebook, YouTube. Sometimes I post on Instagram, but Facebook and YouTube are the main ones. But you can catch me on Instagram too, or you can find my links to Facebook and YouTube on Instagram as well. You can also find my show on the Apple Play Store or Google Play Store via the Entertainment Theater app. You have to download the app. You can also get it on the Roku. And there's not just me on there, but a bunch of other podcasts and independent creators, programs, and things like that on that platform. So if you want to download that, I really appreciate it and help us to support the little people. Um, yes, on top of that, I am a multi certified master and life relationship coach and author. And so, again, my show, Real Talk About Life and Relationships, is about exactly what I'm saying, real talk about life and relationships. Like a lot of stuff that everybody needs to know, but a lot of people don't know. And if they do know, they don't necessarily know how to apply these things to like their everyday life. Because you have a lot of broken people walking around here in your lives, the choices that you make in your lives is a product of that brokenness, and a lot of people don't usually understand that. And we kind of get caught up in these same patterns, these dysfunctional relationships, making a lot of the same mistakes, and overall just not being very happy, fulfilled people. And so I want to get to the nitty gritty. Is what I feel like my specialty is, or my gifting is really getting to the nitty gritty of issues, and so I can help you work from there backwards to figure out how to grow as a person and transform your life where your choices, and then your life will change from there as well. And so for the last couple episodes, I started to focus on how to deal with your issues. I started with when I first started the podcast last year, I started with kind of the basics of what our makeup is as human beings, that we were put here to grow, and we're supposed to grow, and the purpose of life is to grow. This I am Christian, and so I use a lot of scripture to kind of point to those things. When the Bible said be fruitful and multiply, the only way you can get to a point of being fruitful is if you're growing. And so we're supposed to grow, and everything about us is designed to grow. Our brain is designed to grow, our bodies grow, our minds grow, our spirit grows. And so we're supposed to be feeding ourselves those things to help us grow. And when we're not getting those things, we go the opposite way, which is deteriorate, or we not grow, or we stay in the same place. Which is the opposite of what we're supposed to be living. And when we do that, that's when you get unhappiness and all this other stuff. And so you have to understand how these things play out in real life, because it's not really easy to understand. Growing is not easy. Relationships are not easy. And so even when I went into, after I talked about growth and how we grow and the purpose of growth and all of that, I talked about how relationships play an important part in our growth, because they show us things that we would not otherwise see about ourselves, so we can pinpoint the areas that we need to grow, because people have a biased point of view about themselves. And so either you think you're way better than what you are, or not as good as you are. And so it's really good to have that outside perspective, so you can get a more accurate perception, or a more balanced perception of where you are and where you need to grow. So I talked about that, and then I went into dealing with your issues, because this is the main thing. This is how people start making decisions, having bad relationships, not growing in their lives. It's typically, I would say 99.99% of the time, it has to do with some underlying issue that either people know they have, or they don't know they have. And so I want to talk about, so I talked about dealing with your issues and the importance of dealing with your issues. And so as a part of that, down to current, to today, I want to talk about unpacking your emotions because they are a big indicator of your issues, and they can be a hindrance to your issues or they can help you dissect your issues. And so I really want to dive into unpacking your emotions and what does that look like, because I hear a lot of misconceptions about what people think emotions are for. And so one of the two of the biggest things that I feel like people run into when it comes to emotions is that the two biggest misconceptions about that is that emotions are weakness. I hear this a lot from men. Men are taught this. Boys are taught this when they're young, that if they're being emotional, that they're being weak and stuff like that. And that's very, very far from the truth. It's actually pretty dysfunctional because you have emotions for a reason. It's just like you having your right arm and then somebody telling you that you use your right arm, that you're weak. And so you tie your arm behind your back and then you try to go through life with this one arm, and you might get used to doing things with that one arm, but you're doing yourself a huge disservice. You're not progressing as fast as you could be, and you're making your life much harder than it has to be because you have one arm tied behind your back trying to do things that two arms would be much easier to do. You actually have two arms because you need them. Um, so people think that emotions are weakness. Now, even though I know that this is very prevalent when it comes to men, it's also very, very common even when it comes to women thinking that emotions are weakness, especially when they let their emotions out and then they tend to get hurt and stuff like that. And then they might start trying to do things to protect their emotions, which leads to some pretty dysfunctional behavior for women. And so again, another thing that people have a big misconception about when it comes to emotions is that they are the truth. So I've met people who will go around other people and then they just get a feeling that they don't like the person, and then they think that that feeling is valid. Like, I just feel like I don't like you. I don't know why I don't like you. But I think that my feelings are true, or I think you don't like me, and because I feel like you don't like me, then I think my feelings are true. And so we go a lot of the time into this. So I would say the weakness thing, you kind of see it more in men, but you do see it in women. The truth thing about your emotions, you see it more in women, but I have also seen men who do that as well. And so, but neither of these things are true about emotions. Are not for you to dissect what is true and what is not true. Emotions are for you to understand how something is affecting you. And that is what they're for. That does not make them true. The way that something can be affecting you can be very, very far from the truth. So, for example, and I always use this example. So, if you've heard me talk before, took one of my classes, or even got coaching from me, you have heard this example before. And the example is when you go to the movies, you go see a scary movie, or you're watching a scary movie. Everything in your body will react to the movie that you are watching because you are scared. And so because you are scared, you will start to reflect that fear into your environment, which means now creaky sounds that you never paid to before all of a sudden are sound very, very loud. You're getting very, very nervous. Nothing is actually happening different from what was happening an hour ago. But because of your emotions, you feel fear that there's something in your immediate vicinity to be afraid of. And actually, that is not true. So your emotions are not going to always tell you what is true. Now, that's not to say that they can't tell you what is true, but that is the point of processing your emotions so that you can decipher those things and figure out what's true, what's not true, what's valid, what's not valid, stuff like that. And I'm going to get really deeply into that in a minute and try not to go over my time. And so emotions do not tell you the truth. And they also are not weaknesses. And so to understand exactly or a little bit more what emotions are for, they play into the previous episodes I did about growth. And so I explained how, God created us and we're put here on this earth to grow. And we are, and I don't know if I said this in the other video or not, but we are energy. We're thinking, breathing, conscious energy. Our energy is put in this body, and our energy is used to operate this body. Now of course, we have to eat food and stuff like that, but our life essence comes from the energy, which is us. And if you want to say it's a spirit, you can say it's a spirit. To me, it's the same thing. So, but in order for us to grow, and we're put on this earth to grow, we need experience. So In one of my past episodes, I talked about the different ways in which we grow. I said we grow mentally, emotionally, physically, and stuff like that. So if we were put on this earth to grow, we need things in order to grow. Everything that has to grow has to take access. I mean, has to take um, get resources from outside of itself in order to grow. So a plant needs all of these things outside of itself in order to grow. We do too. We're not self-sustained beings. We need things outside of ourselves to grow. And so if we need these things outside of ourselves to grow, a lot of this comes in the form of experiences. So when we get experiences, it feeds us in a lot of different ways and it helps us to grow overall. Where that's what it's designed to do. It doesn't always do that, but I'll explain that later. So if all of these experiences come to us so that we can grow, the way that we interact with these experiences is what will determine the way in which we grow. And the interaction boils down to how the experience affects us. And this is how you will know based on your emotions. So if you're in a situation where, again, I'll use a movie theater, for example, if you're fearful, now you know that this movie scares you. Some people watch scary movies and they don't get scared at all. They think it's funny. But to you, this thing scares you. So now you know how something affects you. Now you're supposed to take that emotion and dive into it a little bit deeper in order to, is how you process it. So you hear a lot of people talk about, I'm processing, I'm processing, I'm processing, but a lot of people can't really explain to you what processing is. And so processing is when you take in the information that's given to you via your senses, your experiences, all the knowledge and input that's given to you, and you take it and you use it to create belief systems. And so I also give the example. I take my kids to Chuck E. Cheese, sometimes for their birthday, and they have that machine. Now they have a lot of stuff on cards, so you don't really use those machines anymore. But they have these machines where when you play the game and you get all the tickets, you can feed the tickets into the machine, and then the machine will give you out a piece of paper explaining to you how many tickets you just put in the machine. So that's what we're doing all the time. We're constantly taking in tickets, for lack of a better word, but input. And then we use these information that we get, or the tickets, and we produce a piece of paper that comes out in the form of a belief system. And that belief system is based on four things. What does this say about me? What does this say about other people? What does this say about God? What does this say about the world? And so as you take in all these experiences, your mind is automatically categorizing all these different experiences into these four boxes. Now, if you didn't have emotions to understand how something affects you, you're not going to know what box to put the stuff in. You're not going to know what's important, what's not important, what to pay attention to, what not to pay attention to. And most of all, you're not going to know how something um, affects you, or you're not going to grow either. So you won't know how something affects you, and because of that, you won't really know how to grow. And so you are to use your emotions for that. So emotions help us to interact with our environment. It helps us to experience our environment, almost to become part of it in a way, so that you can be changed by it. I kind of want to use the example of radiation, but I don't think that's a good example because radiation kills people. But but it's kind of like that. You interact with your environments and then it changes you in some way. Now, it can change you for the better or it can change you for the worse, but your emotions are an indicator into what direction you should go in and how something is affecting you. So I'll give you another really quick example about emotions and its equivalent to your body. So, because with your body, you can't see what's going on inside of you. So, this is another role that emotions play. You can't see what's going on inside of you in your body, but you get some indication of what's going on inside of you when you feel something. You might say that's not emotion, it's more of a sensation. It's true, but it still falls in the same category. So if you put your hand on the stove and it's hot, then you learn, don't touch the stove. You see, you just interacted with your environment, you felt something, it taught you something, and now you take the information and you continue to move on with life and use this core belief that you have created, that hot stuff burns, and now for the rest of your life you're going to avoid hot stuff. So this is the same thing when it comes to our emotions, but we can't see inside of ourselves. We don't know how something is affecting us. We don't know how our belief systems are being created. A lot of this is subconscious. And so your emotions give you an indicator into what is going on inside of you. So the same way you would not ignore, or hopefully you would not ignore, a pain in your leg because you need to, your body is telling you something is wrong here and we need to go to the doctor or get this checked out. The same way your emotions, when especially if it's something painful, but it's giving you an indication as to what something is going on inside of you that needs to be paid attention to. And so it is, so you can see in this examples that I've given, it is absurd to deny your emotions. Like, if you don't admit your emotions or use your emotions for what they're for, you are missing the opportunity to categorize your experiences and put them in these different boxes so that you can continue to grow as a human being. But it starts with your emotions, because if you don't know how something is affecting you or how you feel about something, that's not going to help you know where to put it. You understand what I'm saying? So if you have any questions about this, you can also email me and I'll put my, or contact me and I'll put my information up here shortly. Um, so, um, so you have to know how something is affecting you in order to know how to categorize these things. So some people walk away from experiences and they feel like, because this happened, God cannot be real. Because this happened, I can't trust other people. Because I experienced this, I must be this type of person. Because this specific thing happened, the world is not a safe place. Like, we come to all these different conclusions based on our experiences, and it starts with our emotions. So, but the thing is, you have to know how to process your emotions correctly. And based on all of these examples that I gave, it should really give you an example of how emotions. So, actually, let me give some positive stuff, because I've been talking about emotions in a negative uh, perspective so far. So let me give some positive stuff. Emotions also enrich our lives, because the same way it interacts with us in a kind of radiation type of way, it also has the same effect when it comes to love and happiness, um, and enjoyments. It comes inside of us and it changes us in some way, and most of the time it's in a good way. So, for example, and I know everybody would know what I'm talking about when you say this, because I'll use the movie thing for an example, and I've seen my kids do this and it's really funny. If you watch a karate movie and you really enjoy the karate movie, then after that, all of a sudden you want to do karate for the next couple of days. You see what I'm saying? So we get changed by the things that interact with us and how they interact with us. Luckily, the karate thing typically wears off, but for some people, they make the decision that they want to be going to karate now and study it. So all these interactions kind of help us understand ourselves, mold ourselves, shape ourselves, not shape ourselves, but they shape us. And so it's really important to pay attention to your emotions, because not only can they cause a lot of damage when you don't do that, they are also the avenue by which a lot of enrichment and enjoyment comes in our lives, through us as energy reacting to other energies, and that energy changing us, hopefully for the better. I hope you're following me, because sometimes, yeah. So, again, the emotions tell us how something affects us. It's not the truth. Um, so okay, the question becomes, okay, what do I do with my emotions now if I feel them? So the first thing you have to do is um, process them. And so I talked a little bit about what processing them means, is to put them in these categories so that you can have a deeper understanding of all of these categories. And so, but if you don't, you let your emotions, if you don't understand your emotions, your mind is not going to get to that place of categorizing those things and understanding what those experiences mean in relation to those categories. And so if you deny your emotions, you're stopping the whole process from happening, because, okay, so say for example, if you, I'll use the burn example again, if you put your hand on a stove and it hurts and you deny that it hurts, you act like it didn't hurt you, you're fine and stuff like that, you're not going to learn that hot stuff hurts. And you're going to go through life and keep touching hot stuff and keep burning yourself and wondering why it's not working. It's because you did not fully process that experience to understand what it means. And of course, these categories also boil down into the ones I gave about yourself, others, life, and God. It also, what's safe and what's not safe, is kind of subcategories under these things. So The human mind is very, very complex. It's very, very complex and very, very magnificent at the same time, and also very fragile. So yeah, so you have to process them and understand how you feel about stuff. Because once you accept the feeling, then you can go to the next step, which is this is where your brain comes in. So this is the problem when you just have your feelings and you're not letting those feelings lead you to, you think your feelings are the truth, because actually you're supposed to examine your emotions. And this is where your mind comes in, because your emotions is not for examining truth. It's only for letting you know how something affects you. That's it. And so you need to take that information that your emotions just gave you. This hurts. I don't like this. I don't want this. I want that. You need to take that information and now process it mentally with your brain. And then from there, find out some other important questions about that emotion. And so, but with that being said, the mind helps to keep the emotions in check. So if your emotions is running all rampant and every time you feel something, you jump on it or you react always to your emotions, you're not using your brain at all, because your brain is what you use to make decisions. It's not your emotions. Now, granted, they should be working together, but you should never use your emotions completely and you should never use your brain completely. I'm pretty sure a few of us have been around people who seem to not be using their emotions, and they're not pleasant people to be around. And that creates a whole nother that's a whole nother show. So your mind helps to keep your emotions in check, and your emotions say, hey, I'm feeling this. And then your mind is supposed to say, okay, give me that feeling and let me figure out what's going on. So one of the things that you need to ask yourself when you figure out what's going on is, I'm looking at my notes really quickly just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. What are you feeling? So if you don't have a lot of experience with your emotions, sometimes you can feel stuff and not even know what it is. All you know is if it's pleasant or it's unpleasant, and that's it. And that's elementary. That's a baby's elementary understanding of their own feelings. They don't necessarily apply the logic in the mind to what the feeling is actually means. So let's be mature. We're not babies. So what am I feeling? So even me, sometimes I get so, I guess, uncomfortable. And usually this is the case when it's an uncomfortable feeling. I'm not sure why I'm feeling that. Some people are angry and they don't even know how to connect with their anger. Some people are feel embarrassed and they don't know that they feel embarrassed. They just feel something uncomfortable and they start reacting off of that instead of saying, what am I feeling? So the first thing you need to do when you to process your emotions is to ask yourself, what is the feeling? Now, it may take you a while to figure it out and to piece it together, but if you do the dissection, you will eventually lead to it, because that's what the brain is for. That's the whole thing, that it, purpose. So you say, what am I feeling? Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling shame? Am I feeling embarrassment? Am I feeling, happiness? Am I feeling insecure? And so once you pinpoint what the feeling is, then the next step is to say, where is this feeling coming from? Now, it's very easy to say, well, the feeling is coming from the movie. And that might be the case, but that's what you process, because now you know that I'm feeling afraid because I watched a scary movie. Now it's up to you to take the information that you get from figuring out where it comes from and go to the next step. But before I go to the next step, let me say really quickly, what if the information, the conclusion that you come to is not the movie? Maybe the movie is coming from the feeling. Sometimes my brain doesn't keep up with my mouth. So if you have the feeling, you ask yourself what the feeling is, and then you identify the feeling, then the next is, why am I feeling that? Then where is it coming from? Maybe it's coming from you being this particular person. And then the next step is, why is this particular person making me feel this way? So once you go through that, it could be that they're not a safe person to be around. And so your emotions are actually trying to warn you to get away from this person, because look at how they're making me feel. Look at how they are affecting you. They are making you feel a certain way. And so again, you have to do the processing to get to this point of understanding what is actually going on in your environment. And so, of course, so you can grow. So you say, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And then the feeling may be somebody else, but the feeling can also be coming from inside of you already, because we all know the word trigger, which have become very popular since COVID. Sometimes an experience can be triggering something that's already in you. And so it's very easy to just look at outside of you and say, well, it's that person, or it was that movie, or it was this. But sometimes the feeling is coming from inside of you, and you have to do a little bit deeper searching when it comes to where it's coming from. Sometimes you have feelings that are coming from your childhood. Sometimes you have feelings that are coming from your deeper fears. Sometimes you have feelings that are coming from your insecurities. And so, again, you have to process and go through these steps to figure out where it's coming from. So I hope I'm making sense. If I'm not, please feel free to reach out. So once you figure out, okay, what am I feeling? Where is it coming from? The next thing is it valid? And so, and I guess you can kind of attribute that with what I said about the person is unsafe. So if I feel like this person is hurting me, is that valid or not? Are they actually hurting me, or is this coming from somewhere inside of me, and they have become the focus of it? And so, because sometimes, which I have to tell my kids and people all the time, sometimes your feelings are not valid. And this is why I say, when it comes to it being true. So this is what I mean. You can feel something, that doesn't mean it is true. So you may think, okay, I feel hurt, and this person is making me feel hurt, but it's not necessarily true that that person is hurting you. Sometimes they might be telling you the truth and it hurts, and now you think that they're hurting you, but actually they're helping you. So that's why you have to dig a little bit deeper. Is the feeling valid? Is there something deeper that I need to look at when it comes to where it's coming from? And so that's the other thing you need to do. And then as you do that dissection, the last bit of it is from doing that dissection, you should get some idea of what you need to do next, which I will go to shortly. I just want to pinpoint that doing all this is how you process information. So, for example, you hear people who have these terrible experiences, and then they want to create a law to stop other people from having the same experience. That comes from processing. So it's like, you had this terrible experience, you went through the emotions of it, you learned something from it, which I'm going to get to. You kind of dug into it, and now what has come out of that is a change that needs to be made. And so this is how you process information. And so it is very crucial to growth to process information, because growth is rooted in learning. And when you don't process information, you don't learn. You actually will stay stuck where you are, because if you don't ever take the time to figure out how you feel about something, you're not going to now make the changes that need to be made in yourself, in your environment, in your relationships. And you will continue to put yourself in these same situations and have this vicious cycle going on that will never change, which means you're not growing. And so processing information is absolutely essential to growth. It's not always comfortable. It's not always, pleasant. I definitely don't want to do it all the time. But it's necessary to our growth as human beings, and that leads to our happiness and purpose and all that other good stuff. So if you don't process information, which starts with your emotions, you will remain stuck, and you will not fully understand the world, yourself, and everything else that's going on around you. So the main thing, like I want to say, and I'm going to wrap up here really quickly, is don't run from your emotions. Like you don't, they're not comfortable all the time. I mean, they're really not. But if you run from them, you're not learning, you're not growing, and you're not, again, processing information. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. I probably said process information like 100 times by now, but yeah, you're not going to process the information. You're just going to stuff it down, and you're not going to make any changes and stuff like that. So you have to feel it. It's uncomfortable. It's bad. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes it feels like it's going to drive you insane to face some feelings that you have, but you must do that in order to grow. You must. So don't run from your emotions. you can take some time to figure out how you want to deal with them, but they should always be done in a healthy way. But you have to not run from emotions and allow them to be expressed, because the emotions are like the icing on a cake. So I can't get to the cake if I don't even want to eat the icing. So once you deal with the icing, now you get to the cake, which is the logical part where you start trying to understand the emotion, where it came from, why is it there, and stuff like that. So yeah. So so ask yourself these questions when it comes to your emotions. And the last thing that I wanted to leave off with before I wrap it up is that after you ask yourself, actually I meant to put these questions up here while we're talking, but I got so caught up with what I was saying that I forgot to do it. So I'll do a recap really quickly, because I always want to give people stuff that they can take away from this and learn. I don't want to just do a podcast for the sake of doing a podcast. I want to give you some tips and insights to help you manage your life and your relationships. And so, the first question to recap this whole thing of how to process your emotions, number one, is allow yourself to feel them. Don't run from them. The second is to ask yourself, what are you feeling? So get an understanding of what are you feeling. Is it shame? Is it fear? Is it, excitement? What are you feeling? And then you need to ask yourself, why am I feeling it? And kind of pinpoint the different things in your environment or even within yourself that might be contributing to that feeling and why you might be feeling it. And then, is the feeling valid? Is it a valid feeling? For example, if I go to the movies and I get scared and I feel really fearful, I can say, I'm scared. Why am I feeling this? Because I watched a scary movie. Is it valid? No, it's not. There's nothing happening around me right now that would justify this level of fear. That every nothing changed 10 minutes ago. It's the same thing. So no, it's not valid. Then that lets you know the next step is to, what can you learn? What can you do, change, or learn? So it might be up to you to say, well, I don't want to watch scary movies anymore because I don't like the way that they affect me. Or if I watch scary movies, maybe I need to do this and this and that. And then what did I learn about my environment, about myself, is that maybe I'm very, very sensitive to scary movies. And so you learn all these things. And again, they're going to tell you about yourself, other people, God, and life. You put them in those categories, and then you move on with that information to the next experience. And as you go through life, you just keep stockpiling these experiences and putting them in these categories. And lo and behold, you grow as a human being. But just to wrap up on this last question, what do I need to do? Sometimes what you need to do is stop being silly, say you're sorry, go to therapy. What do you need to change? Maybe you have some habits in your life that is contributing to you thinking and feeling the way you think or way you feel. And then, what can I learn? What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about other people? Blah, blah, blah. So that's my show for today. I really, really hope it was helpful to you all, and that you can use these things to kind of start on your own journey. Again, if you want to have a free session with me and dive a little bit more into unpacking your own emotions, because if you've been stuffing those things down for a very long time, you have a lot of unprocessed information. And usually when it's not intentionally processed, you need to reprocess it, which is a whole different podcast. So you have a lot of unprocessed or not thoroughly processed conclusions and belief systems that you have created over the years. And it takes a lot to dig those things out. Like, trying to get those emotions out is the equivalent of being constipated. Like, it can be really, 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 really difficult. And so sometimes people need a little bit of help to start trying to sort through these things, because they feel these things. They don't know what they mean. They don't understand how they affected them. They don't know if those feelings are valid. They don't know who they need to stay away from, how they need to change, how they need to grow. And so those things just get compounded upon each other when we don't do the work. So that's it for today. Be sure to tune in next week, when at 12 o'clock. I'm really, really going to make sure I get on time this time. And tune in again for some more real talk about life and relationships. You can visit my website for a free session from me. And yeah, I think that's it. So thank you so much for tuning in. And you guys have a blessed day and a great weekend. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.